Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Pokémon SoulSilver. Unfortunately, my technique for recording game data played on the 3DS does not work for base DS games, and so we have to go back to using our old tried and true method of pointing the camera at the 3DS. As far as acquiring an actual copy of Pokémon SoulSilver, I didn't. This game has always been on my radar and I've wanted to have a copy for myself for a very long time, but I think I am starting to get to the point where I am just getting priced out of being able to acquire retro games. They are just getting way too expensive to try and get legitimate copies for myself, especially for really popular games like the Pokemon games. And so I've always kind of revered this game because it always gets such high praise on the internet. Everyone just says like, oh, it's the best Pokemon game ever. And so rather than trying to spend hundreds of dollars to get a legitimate copy, I've resorted to other methods, and I will leave it at that. Pokemon SoulSilver is a remaster of the second generation of Pokemon games in the Johto region. I feel like out of all the Pokemon casual reviews that I do, most of them are in the Johto region, and I think it's because this region just fascinates me the most. Like, it's the one that I'm most nostalgic about, and Heart Gold and SoulSilver for the aforementioned reasons. I've always wanted to play these versions. Immediately, right off the bat, Gold and Silver did not give you the option to play as a female character. That was introduced in Crystal, where you could choose between a male and a female. And in this game, instead of being able to play as Chris, they made an entirely new female character called Lyra. This decision kind of disappointed me because I always liked Chris as a character. So this time around, I did play as the male protagonist. If you've never heard a Pokemon casual review for me before, I typically like to play Pokemon that I haven't played in a previous run, just to prevent me from doing the same old Gyarados, Arcanine, Legendary Mewtwo, you know, all of those that are the obvious strongest type of Pokemon, which makes the game maybe a little too easy in my opinion. And so I always do like to mix it up. This time around for my starter, I ran with the Totodile, which turned into Feraligatr. I picked up an Ekans pretty early on, and I've never really used an Ekans in a Pokemon run before, so I decided to roll with the Arbok this time. One of the very early towns that you visit, you have the opportunity to trade for an Onix, and if you don't know this, whenever you play with a traded Pokemon, they gain bonus XP, and so I was able to acquire an Onix that was already pre-named Rocky, and if you've heard my previous casual reviews of the Johto region, Rocky does not listen to you until you beat the first gym leader. They have reprimanded that in this remake, and so I went with Rocky with the intent of evolving him into Steelix, but it wasn't until a little later that I realized that you do not get the metal coat in order to evolve an Onix into a Steelix until after you beat the Elite Four. Now, there is a strategy in which you catch, I think, some Magnemites, and there's like a 5% chance that one of them is holding a metal coat, but I didn't go about doing that, and so yeah, I pretty much did most of the run with the base Onix and not evolving it into a Steelix, despite my ability to trade to another Pokemon game. Like, if I had that metal coat, I think I could have made it work. I just didn't want to dedicate the time to get a metal coat early into the game. I just love that his name is Rocky. Like, it's the most simple name that somebody could name their Onix. Like, when I think of a 5-year-old naming an Onix, Rocky would be like the first name. You know, I always heard that a Heracross was quite a good bug type Pokemon to keep in your roster, and so this time I really wanted to try out a Heracross, and it took a while to find him. He has a low appearance rate, and so you have to like end up headbutting a lot of trees and just get lucky that you do eventually find a Heracross. And so eventually I did find my Heracross. Yeah, Heracrosses are very, very strong. They're bug and fighting type. As far as like movesets go, he ran with Brick Break for quite a while, but then he eventually learns the move Close close combat, which is like one of the strongest fighting type moves in the game. And so he was very helpful in that case. As far as flying type goes, I feel like I've used most of the flying type Pokemon that are available to you in this region. Like I've had Fearos before, I've had Hoot Hoots before, or Knocked Owls before, I've ran the Skomori before, which you don't get until late into the game, and the Togetic. And so this time around, I never had a Natu on my team before. So I got a Natu, evolves it into Zaptu, and that just leaves our 6th slot. And so when you get to, I think it's like the 5th town or the 6th town, you do have the opportunity to trade for a Voltorb. And I've never ran with an Electrode either. So I traded for a Voltorb, and his name is almost as remarkable as Rocky's name. He is a Voltorb named Billy. And I just found my Rocky and Billy names were pretty absurd, and they kind of stood out a lot. Now, you can't change the names, and so I really decided to like lean into the silly, disingenuous names for my party. And so my Feraligatr was named Crikey, my Xatu was named Birdie, my Arbok is named Snecky, Heracross is named Buggy. And so we got Crikey, Billy, Rocky, Birdie, Snecky, and Buggy. I don't often name my Pokemon, but it did make the run a little more humorous. One of the cool things that was introduced into this game is your Pokemon follow you. Whichever Pokemon is in the top of your party, they will follow behind you. Now, I've played many of Pokemon games that do allow you to walk alongside your Pokemon at this point. I do think that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee did this in one of the best ways, in my opinion, where like some characters or some Pokemon you can like ride on as they like fly or run around, which is fun. This game does get marks for being like the first one to introduce it, as far as I know. It might have been Diamond and Pearl, now that I think about it. Other things that I have noticed when thinking back at Silver, Gold, and Crystal, the visuals obviously are upgraded to that 4th generation look. Whenever you enter in like a new location, like the Whirl Islands, or like the forest, the Mystic Forest I think it's called, it'll give you like some artwork to kind of visualize the area that you're entering. When you're in the middle of battling important characters like gym leaders or your rival, occasionally they'll pop back in to make a quick snide remark like, you haven't beaten me yet, before the battle resumes again. Most of the gyms got an overall facelift, which is very much appreciated, because I felt like the gym layout in the first 2 games in Gold and Silver were lacking in a way. Most of them is just like, follow this path, fight this trainer, follow this path, fight the next trainer. In this one, they actually did seem to implement some puzzles. Like for the Bug gym leader, you have to like toggle these switches to go along the right path. In the Dragon gym leader, you have to like rotate this platform and move it in a particular way so you can progress to the next section. And so they did introduce a little more of the puzzles that I've come to know and love whenever you enter a gym. Running, I don't think running was in the original Gold and Silver, but it's here now. And instead of like having to hold the B button, you can just toggle it on or off. This comes with its own caveat, however. I think I read somewhere at the beginning of the game that if you're running, you are more likely to encounter random encounters. And I felt like that was certainly true. But even if I was walking, it's like every 4 or 5 tiles when I'm walking in the grass or surfing on the ocean, or I'm in a cave or something like that, like the encounter rate is crazy. And so it's like you almost, if you don't want those encounter rates, you need to be constantly stocked up with repels in order to avoid that. But actually, another problem that I've always had with the Gold and Silver games is the level gap and the lack of experience that you have by the time you reach the Elite Four. And so it's almost like in your best interest to do every one of these random battle encounters to try and scrounge up as much XP as possible, because I feel like by the time you get to the 8th gym leader, that's the dragon type gym leader, her Kingdra is like vastly over leveled compared to where your team should be, assuming you're rolling with a full party of 6 Pokemon. And the gym leaders get even like a crazier high level, because like by the time you get to the gym, at least for me anyway in this game, most of my guys were just getting to level 40, and like Lance and the your rival, and like some of the end game gym leaders, their Pokemon are like level 50, 55, like around that range. And so there's just like suddenly this huge level gap that you have to deal with, which some people may like, because a lot of people do think that the Pokemon games are too easy, but I don't want to have to grind. And grinding in Pokemon games is particularly difficult if you don't have a bunch of trainers to battle, which will give you extra XP. And so you're ending up like having to go around and battle all these random encounters. One thing that I definitely have to give this remaster praise for, though, is once you get into the Pokemon League in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, you pretty much like aren't able to fly back to Johto, because that Pokemon League is considered part of Kanto, or is it Kanto? And the only way to get back to Johto is you have to talk to this guy with an Abra, and he will teleport you back to Johto. But if you decide to re-challenge the Elite Four, you have to like go all the way back through Victory Road, and it's this whole thing. This game totally lets you just fly back and forth between the Elite Four and Johto. So if you decide that your Pokemon just aren't up to snuff yet to challenge the Elite Four, you are welcome to fly back and forth and try again as many times as you want. So that's very much appreciated. I mean, I feel like I've talked so many times about the Gold, Silver, and Crystal games that most of the base game stuff that I have to talk about is like I've already kind of talked about them previously, and so that's why I'm kind of focusing on the differences between this version and its older predecessors. There's a couple new features that I noticed. There's like a new Safari Zone that you can go through, which is nice, and there's like different contests for like the bug contest and Pokelathon or something like that. I don't know. Typically, I don't play around with that kind of side content if I don't have to, or if there's not like a really good carrot dangling in front of the stick for me to chase after. The gambling corner that you get to in like the third city, Goldenrod City, I think it is, they took it out because gambling is kind of frowned upon in video games in certain countries, and so Pokemon has kind of strayed away from like doing the slot machines and that kind of thing. Instead, they have this new game called Voltorb Flip, which is kind of like a mixture between Sudoku and Minesweeper. As you can imagine, there's like a very high level of skill and also chance in order to actually get rewards for this Voltorb Flip. Unfortunately, most of the strongest TMs are locked behind trying to get this resource that you can only get through Voltorb Flip, like Thunderbolt. I really wanted my Electrode to learn Thunderbolt instead of Thunder, because that low accuracy of Thunder is just killer. But I mean, the amount of time that I would have to grind playing this game Voltorb Flip to get that Thunderbolt is too much. And in previous games that did have like the whole gambling system, you could just go buy your coins with your money, your currency. You could just go buy the chips, the roulette chips or whatever, in order to buy the TMs or the Pokemons. That is not the case for Voltorb Flip. Like the only way that you can get these rewards is by actually just grinding games of Voltorb Flip. And that's kind of one of my big gripes about this game, is like the lack of really good TMs, unless you're willing to go through the Battle Frontier or Voltorb Flip. Or if you beat the Elite Four, then there's like really good TMs like Psychic in Kanto. But it's like after you beat the Elite Four, the rest of the game is kind of a cakewalk, because Elite Four, all the guys are super high level, and then the gym leaders in Kanto don't reflect that extra high level, and so like you don't need the super strong TMs anymore. And also, this game is not modern enough to do away with the whole HMs. If for those of you who are not familiar, HMs are moves that you can teach your Pokemon in order to navigate around the world. Things like Rock Smash to break down barriers, Surf to go across water. This game is particularly notorious for having like 3 different water HMs. While this sounds all well and good, only a handful of these HMs are actually viable in battle, and so you don't want to take up one of your Pokemon's precious move pools in order to have like a weaker HM move. And so most people just resort to having like 5 main Pokemon, and then they have an HM slave, someone who knows the cut and the flash and the surf and all of that. For me, my HM slave was actually a Wooper who knew most of the 3 water HMs. I obviously taught Surf to my Feraligatr because Surf is a really strong move battle-wise, but like Whirlpool and Waterfall, Rock Smash, Flash, my Wooper knew all of those HMs. Like there are just way too many to keep track of and to actually equipped on your main party. I'm definitely glad that they did away with HMs in more modern Pokemon games. I just wish that this one had made the cut. One notable thing for me when I was playing this game is the Kimono Girls. When you reach Ecutreak City, I think it's called, there in the original games, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, you enter this building and then there are these like 5 Kimono Girls, and each one of them has the evolution for the time. And it was a really cool showcase, like to see all the different evolutions, and when you beat them, then you acquire the HM Surf. In this game, I was initially disappointed because when you get there, all it is it's like one Kimono Girl getting attacked by a rocket grunt with like 1 coughing, and then you defeat the coughing and you get Surf. And I'm like, really? Why would you replace the 5 Kimono Girls just for a rocket grunt fight? But it's because they were giving the Komodo Girls a bigger showcase, more at the end game. After you beat the 8th gym leader, you kind of like encounter these 5 Kimono Girls along your adventure, and you help them out in varying places. And so actually you have to do like this battle against the 5 Kimono Girls like back to back, like no time to go and heal up your Pokemon. You have to defeat all 5 evolutions in a row, and they are a relatively higher level than your Pokemon at the time, and they are pretty tough. But your reward for this is able to access the Whirl Islands to encounter a Lugia. I imagine it's different if you're playing Heart Gold, but yeah, it's like that's how you get the Silver Wing to finally confront that Lugia and catch it. So I do think it was a smart decision to give these Kimono Girls a bigger spotlight. Initially, I was just so disappointed that they did away with them, but no, it's because they have bigger plans for the Kimono Girls. In these games, you can, after you like face off against certain trainers, they will ask you to give them your phone number, and in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, you give them their phone number, and every once in a while, it will pause the game, and these characters will call you and ask you for a rematch. Sometimes they'll just ask to chat or whatever. In this game, I felt like a ton more asked for my phone number, and in the original games you kind of ran out of slots, so you can only have a certain amount of trainers in your contact list. But in this game it's just like endless, so you just say yes to anybody who asks to have your phone number. But there must be something that I'm missing, because it never paused the game, and like none of these people who asked for my phone number ever called me. Does that mean that I'm the one who is expected to call them? Like maybe it's one of those situations where hey, I'm the one who initialized this acquaintance. Now the ball was in my court to reach out to them via phone. I mean, obviously, of course, like your mom's gonna call you because she takes some money every time you do a battle, and she'll like buy items for you and she'll get them delivered to you. But like as far as like the random trainers, they never called me. But other than that, I mean, there's just like the more quality of life features that you would come to expect from a later Pokemon game. Like I don't have to go into my boxes and change the boxes whenever one of the boxes is full in the PC. It will automatically do that, which is nice. As far as like the AI battles go, I feel like the opponents that I'm facing are actually a lot smarter. When I play the original Gold, Silver, and Crystal, I feel like sometimes I can risk sending out a Pokemon that could potentially be weak to my opponent's Pokemon, and I just can usually chance that they won't use that super effective move. That's not really the case in this more modern version, where like, yeah, if I send out a water type against a grass type, that grass type is absolutely going to destroy me with a super effective grass type move. There's not really like any chancing that the AI is going to make a stupid decision at this point. I mean, there are occasions when I'm just like, really? Why'd you use that move? But I mean, for the most part, they are genuinely smarter. And pair this with the huge level gap between you and some of the opponents late game, and this is actually a fairly tough game, I would say, especially trying to do the Elite Four. Like, oh my gosh, I had to try so many times to finally beat the Elite Four, but it was definitely satisfying. No, I did not encounter Red, and so I know, like, I did not technically beat this game because you haven't beaten the game until you beat Red, but I don't know. I felt like I was kind of burnt out from doing the Elite Four, and yeah, it was kind of nice beating all the easy Kanto gym leaders. And exploring Kanto is actually a lot better in this game because I feel like when you were playing Gold, Silver, and Crystal, when you went to Kanto, it was more like a diet Kanto, where a lot of like the caves and the forests that you go into are like trimmed down. In this game, I feel like they were more restored to their former Kanto glory. I do wish that some of the second generation Pokemon were more early available in this version. Like, I wish we got a Houndour or a Murkrow in Johto rather than having to wait until I get to Kanto to encounter those Pokemon. And so there are just some decisions that I feel like they could have changed for the better. They did implement like maybe 2 or 3 double battles in this version of the game. I felt like I would have enjoyed more double battles being implemented. The more and more I talk about this remaster and what I wish they had, I feel like I'm kind of wanting a Let's Go version of Johto. Maybe not the easiness of it, but as far as like the modern current features of Pokemon, I feel like they could revisit Johto with like a Let's Go Togepi or something like that. As far as a score for this game, let's give it a 4 out of 5, which is what I give most Pokemon games, I feel. I don't think this game is going to be changing any minds about Pokemon. If you know you like Pokemon, you're probably gonna like this one. If you know you don't like Pokemon, this is not going to convert you into a Pokemaniac. I do feel maybe a little disappointed. That's probably my own fault, just because I've built this game up in my mind so long. Like, I've been waiting so many years to finally play this game, and so I think my expectations of it were a lot larger than what it deserved to be. Like, it's still a great game. I still had a lot of fun with it, but as far as like people raving about it on the internet saying it's the best Pokemon game ever, I mean, let's agree to disagree. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Pokemon SoulSilver, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!